Welcome in to Stop the Takes, football podcast focused on getting back to just talking ball. I'm Dakota, that's Austin, and we are continuing our NFL draft reviews division by division. Today's is the AFC South, officially halfway through. So we've done the AFC and NFC North, the AFC and NFC East. So all four of those videos are out there, along with some individual teams ones. So go check those out. But today we start the back half with the AFC South. And to kick things off, it will be your Indianapolis Colts.
That's right.
So they did one of the chalkiest picks imaginable, but I think we both agree was a solid pick. They take Tyler Warren at 14th overall, tight end out of Penn State. How are you feeling about that?
Loved the first pick, man. Think they nailed the Tyler Warren pick. They got pretty lucky because the Bears went Colson Loveland at 10. And I say they get lucky because if the Bears were looking for tight end, a lot of people had Tyler Warren ranked as the number one tight end, but the Bears took Loveland. So Warren kind of just fell in our laps, man. We just stayed put, got Tyler Warren in there, was the biggest need on the team. It's also arguably best player available at the time in the draft. A lot of people had Tyler Warren as a top 10 player in this draft class. And when need and best player available are married together, dude, it's a perfect combo. Will be very interesting to see how he fits in this offense. I think Shane Steichen can do a lot of fun things with Tyler Warren. He's a very versatile player in the run game, good pass blocker. There's not a lot of good, run blocker. Not a lot of good run blocking tight ends coming out this day and age, especially that are also good receiving tight ends. So I think he's going to fit in well, man.
Yeah, I even as a division rival, all these are for us. But loved the pick too. I think he finished like 8th on the consensus board. So also just crazy value. To your point, he was a top 10 player. Getting him at 14 feels great. And I love this fit. To what you just kind of touched on with his skill set being so versatile and pairing that with AR and Jonathan Taylor, the things you can do out of the backfield with him. He did like QB sneaks and just ran the ball out of shotgun for Penn State and stuff. So like you add just another versatile playmaker to that offense and something that the Colts have lacked for a while now, though, and just a reliant tight end. For Anthony Richardson, I feel like it's changed a bit with the way the NFL operates, but like 15 years ago, we were always talking about you want a security blanket for your quarterback, your young quarterback. And I think, have that for Anthony Richardson, having a guy like Tyler Warren to attack the middle of the field. So love the pick and excited to see what they do with him and how he may tear up the Titans.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I do fully expect him. You mentioned the quarterback sneak role. I do fully expect him to take that over immediately with AR's injury history. He'll do what Mark Andrews does for the Ravens, and he'll be the designated QB sneaker. But you make a good point, man. It's been kind of a revolving door at tight end now for the while for the Colts, and they just needed a solid starter. And they targeted Brock Bowers last year, which, feels pretty bad at this point, not going to lie, as a Colts fan. Would have loved to have Brock Bowers, but, he went right before us at pick number 13. We were picking 15 last year. Tried to trade up for him, apparently, at some point as well. But, hey, Tyler Warren, he's not Brock Bowers as a prospect, but like we just mentioned, a top 10 player in this class. So a lot of people have a lot of faith in him. So it's going to be very fun. Now that offense is looking pretty solid now with the receiving core that's been kind of rejuvenated since last year or last couple years, drafting Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce just broke out. And then, of course, Michael Pittman has been there since 2020. Now you got Tyler Warren to the mix. Big question now for the Colts is the QB play. Like, the QB play is going to be a big question mark to see if AR can finally break out and stay healthy, or if Daniel Jones takes the job, see what Daniel Jones can do. We'll see, man. But they have weapons around them. So
That they do, and add another great one in Tyler Warren to that bunch. Excited to see what they do with him. The Colts then go to the defensive side of the ball with JT Tuimoloau, JTT out of Ohio State, really good run defender. A lot of these guys we've talked about in this edge class, there's some high-end pass rushing ability guys that we had touched on, like the Mike Greens, who were just kind of elite at that. But a lot of guys in this class that are really good run defenders that, you're drafting for that part of their skill set, but also just for the, projecting that they can become a pretty good pass rusher. So kind of like that fit for them pairing him alongside, with Kwity Paye, who's been there for a minute now, and then last year's first round pick, in Latu.
Yeah, to me, it was just a solid pick, solid rotational piece. Really, as far as pass rushing is concerned, it's a big part of this team's future is Latu. Obviously, his development, see how he can develop as a pass rusher. And JTT might be able to add to that, but like you said, he's more of a run defending type.
Yeah.
It is pretty unfortunate. We've talked about this off air, Dakota, but Donovan Ezraku went literally a pick before we picked, and I am interested because it does feel like Donovan Ezraku would have been a good fit. Pretty upset about that, not gonna lie, but congrats, Cowboys, you got him at a great pick. But like I said, it's a solid second round pick. I wouldn't say it's a crazy pick or anything. Don't expect him to come in and start, but he will be a solid piece on rotational piece on that defensive line.
Yeah, it's one of those what we'll never know things, but would be fascinating to know if Ezraku was on the board there, would the Colts have taken him at pick 45? But still get a solid rotational guy, like you said, and he's going to be a very good run defender right out of the gate. So maybe add some more rotational pieces, let some other guys focus more on pass rushing, and defensive depth along the defensive line is important in today's NFL. So can never have too many of those guys out there. The Colts then take one of the reaches in the draft with Justin Wally, cornerback out of Minnesota. Pretty athletic guy, 4'4", a little bit smaller corner build at 5'10", 190. But he's got a little bit of speed to him. How'd you feel about that one?
Not great. I mean, this is really the pick in the Colts draft that made me not like it as much, man. There was more talented corners on the board. I mean, Jacob Parrish went just a couple picks later. And, or you could take a developmental quarterback. I talked to you about this just before we got on there. Jalen Milroe went a couple picks after this. I would have liked to see us take a chance on Milroe in the third round as a developmental quarterback who can honestly make an impact in the run game right now for any team he gets or for any team he plays for. So, but yeah, Justin Wally was a bit of a reach, man. He was more of like consensus 5th or 6th round player. You take him in the third round. To me, you have to nail your first 3 picks, man. And I feel like this is just not the best third round pick in the world. They could have gotten better, in my opinion. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player. We don't know yet. But to me, it's not just that there were better players on the board, but there were better players at his position on the board as far as I was concerned. So, yeah, that was a bit of a reach and probably my least favorite pick in the Colts draft.
Yeah, I will say, the one thing that's positive with him, and maybe this was more scheme focused, right? Because he's apparently better in zone than man, and the Colts do run a bit more of zone, so maybe they were just focused on the scheme fit. But yeah, Parrish going a couple picks later does feel a little rough, who was, definitely a consensus higher on that board. Colts then take a really interesting prospect, Jalen Travis, in the 4th round. Insanely athletic dude for his size. Developmental tackle, 6'8", 340, and had a 35-inch vertical at that size, which is insane. And 26 bench reps, so strong. Dude is just a freak athlete.
Wow. Yeah, that's a Chris Ballard kind of guy. Chris Ballard loves freak athletes. I actually really like this pick, man. He's not a great run blocker, but he's fantastic in pass blocking.
Yeah.
So I honestly, and big athletic developmental tackle, that's kind of the luxury the Colts have. There's not a lot of team needs right now for the Colts.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest one was tight end. And we're really set at tackle. So being able to have that just, luxury developmental tackle to have behind our 2 bookend tackles right now, and Braden Smith and Raymond. So yeah, it's interesting, man. I like that pick a lot. 6'8", 339, having a 35-inch vertical, dude. That is absolutely absurd. So I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, and then we'll touch on, the next guy, round 5, DJ Giddens, running back out of Kansas State. I know PFF was really high on them, Trevor over there. But fantastic from a grading perspective with PFF, and also just is good in zone and gap scheme, which is great to have a guy that's versatile where you can run any type of plays with him. But I like that pairing to go along with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, who's had, some injury issues as he gets up there a little bit in age now.
Yeah, I thought this was also a solid pick. Obviously not coming in to start. That's again kind of like what we just talked about with Joe and Travis as well. But good depth piece, and like you said, he's a versatile player, which is very nice. And it also speaks to this great running back class, man. In some classes, this might be a third round player, but this is just,
Yeah.
the kind of class where you could get really good running backs in rounds 5 through 7, dude, like potential starters in the future. So, and it's nice not having to come in and be a starter too for a guy like that, like DJ Giddens. Like he can sit behind Jonathan Taylor, one of the better backs in the NFL. So
Yeah.
another just solid pick for the Colts, I think there.
Yeah, and he brings some size, 6 foot 212, but also still really athletic. So be curious to see again what Steichen can do with him in that offense. And then the Colts do take the developmental quarterback in round 6, but not the one that people would have probably bet on.
Yeah.
So they take Riley Leonard, quarterback out of Notre Dame, who probably helped his draft stock a ton just from the playoff run alone of just being a part of that. But Colts take Riley Leonard to be the potential developmental guy behind now AR and Daniel Jones.
Interesting scheme fit, man. I mean, he just kind of fits perfectly into this QB room of guys who are athletic dudes who can run really well, but aren't developed passers, aren't great, accurate passers. And Riley Leonard kind of fits right into that mold, to be completely honest with you. Again, it's a 6th-round QB, so I love taking chances on 6th-round developmental quarterbacks. He has no chance of playing at all this year. But he could, maybe develop down the road if he has time to develop in the NFL, become a better passer. But also really like the intangibles of Riley Leonard. He seemed like a great leader at Notre Dame, and like you said, on that playoff run was really fun to watch. So don't hate taking a chance on a guy like this, but kind of like you said, I would have liked a little bit of different skill set in the room, because you already have AR and you already have Daniel Jones. So it feels like you don't really need a third guy like that. You already have the backup covered for the scheme. I would have liked taking a guy that maybe has a little bit different of skill set. But solid pick though.
Yeah, it is funny how much of a type Ballard has in wanting dudes who are in ridiculous athletes, willing to run the ball, put their head down, but need to develop from a passing perspective. So definitely an interesting pick. And then Colts wrap things up with Tim Smith, defensive tackle out of Alabama, who's really a run defender, doesn't have much of a pass rushing ability. And then an interesting guy in Hunter Wohler out of Wisconsin, because he's kind of an interesting hybrid player, where he's played a little bit at safety, but also played linebacker. So he's actually pretty good at coverage, and is a pretty sound tackler. So it's interesting seeing guys that have some form of elite skill set like that in dropping, being in the 7th round. And he's not like that bad of an athlete either. So could be an interesting guy to get some opportunity out there to play some passing downs.
Yeah, I mean, he probably will have a chance to play. Our linebacker depth has been kind of depleted this offseason, so I could definitely see him having a chance to play at some point. But overall, man, this draft to me is, again, a bunch of solid picks. Really, it's just the Justin Wally pick in the 3rd round that I didn't love. But it does feel a bit like the Bengals draft, Dakota, where it feels like it's so heavily dependent on your 1st-round pick. Like, if Tyler Warren doesn't work out, it doesn't feel like this draft class is going to make that big of an impact on this team. But, Tyler Warren was a home run pick as far as his projection is concerned, but it doesn't mean that he's going to work out 100% of the time. So, that scares me a little bit when, one draft class is so heavily dependent on one player's development.
And I do think you're right. I think that's a very good comp for it, from both perspectives, right? Like, unless the odds of, a guy in the 6th round or whatever becoming an elite player, which is just not very likely, you're pretty much dependent on, does Tyler Warren become an elite tight end or not? And then you'll always kind of view this class from that lens. But yeah, a lot of developmental guys, a lot of interesting guys to add to potential rotational pieces, some guys to sit behind. And again, to the point too, like the Colts depth chart was in a position that wasn't that bad. So they're an interesting team drafting that high when they didn't really have glaring needs, because it's really just come down to quarterback play lately. So
yeah, which is a big part of winning.
It still will be. Yeah, it still will be. So with that in mind, what was your favorite pick for the Colts?
Got to be Tyler Warren, man.
Yeah.
I know it's the easy answer, but it is the answer, dude, because they kind of let the draft come to them. best player available and a team need, and they got that in one, and they might have gotten the best tight end in the draft, and he's a great playmaker, man. And I'm excited to see him in this offense. So yeah, it's got to be Tyler Warren.
Yeah, that's where I would go too. I'm going to go DJ Giddens, running back at Kansas State, because I think the shelf life of running backs in the NFL is they fall off a cliff out of nowhere, like Todd Gurley did. Where like that stat that he's still like top 3 in rushing touchdowns since 2015 or something. Been out of the league for like 5 years. I think with Jonathan Taylor getting up there, having had the injuries recently, adding a guy like that with that skill set that he can kind of do anything in the run game. I think you could potentially have a guy at the very least that's getting playing time as a 5th round pick, but could take over the reins and play a lot more if something were to happen. So you love that in a 5th round pick.
I like it. You want a consensus draft grade?
Yeah. So yeah, we look at Renee Bugner, guy on Twitter, does consensus draft grades for teams, basically taking a lot of like 20 something major sports writers out there or websites and collectively takes all the grades and does kind of a composite GPA score and then ranked all the teams. So we've been looking at those for each team. So where do the Colts come in at?
Number 22 in the NFL. Solid draft, right around average, I would say, which I agree with. I mean, I think a lot of these graders are probably looking at what we're looking at and saying, hey, the first pick is great. Yeah. Heavily reliant on that first pick working out, though. Does rank last in the division. I won't spoil the rest of the division, but there is another team that's very close, but does rank last in the AFC South, which does hurt me as a Colts fan. But it's all right, man. There's a lot of good drafts in the AFC South.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Again, a lot of teams we've mentioned again and again, have had really good drafts. So, all right, that is the Colts 2025 class. So now we move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who made a splash immediately in the draft by trading up from 5 to 2 to take Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter at second overall.
What a move, man. This is really when the draft party got crazy, Air House, Dakota, when this move happened. And we were starting to hear rumblings before the draft party was starting. Now, you were getting ready. You were hosting, so you're getting the house ready and everything like that. So you weren't hearing the rumblings like I was. But I was starting to hear, I'm like, man, are the Jags going to make this move? And they did it, man. Made an absolute blockbuster move to move up to number 2 overall to draft Travis Hunter. Honestly, I think easily the most interesting prospect in this entire draft class. One of the most interesting prospects that we have seen in years, 2-way player full-time at Colorado at wide receiver and cornerback. You all know that. If anyone's watching this video by now, you probably know this, but he was electric, man. And what he's going to do in the NFL, people have debated for months. Like, is he going to be a full-time receiver? Is he going to be a full-time corner, part-time receiver? Who knows how the Jags are going to use him? Right now, it sounds like they want him to be a full-time wide receiver with packages at cornerback, which honestly, to me and you, Dakota, I think that was the most surprising outcome to us coming into the draft, because it felt like if he was going to do anything full-time and one thing part-time, it was going to be full-time cornerback with packages at wide receiver.
Yeah, that was the most surprising part in all of this. I think, I had mentioned it to you probably a month ago or whatever. I was like, I don't think we've had enough rumblings of people projecting the potential for a trade up for Travis Hunter. Like, with his unique skill set, I was surprised that wasn't going on more. And then, of course, it happens. But yeah, I do think it is interesting because, what we talked about is it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to have a guy start at corner, be out there down to down, and then have offensive packages where you put them in, because that has happened time and time again in the NFL. With even guys that are like return specialists, like a Devin Hester, right? Like the Bears, he was listed as wide receiver, but it was really, he was a return guy. They would sometimes plug him in on some offensive plays. I think it's easier to do that route than it is to have like packages on defense, because, and I'm guessing it's going to be more situationally driven, where they may want to put him out there on third downs, or if they get up, you want to make sure they don't come back in the game. But that also seems like you're putting in more of an injury risk if you are also winning the game. So that is the more surprising part to me. And from the trade perspective, I don't know if I love it, to be completely honest. Like, I do love Travis Hunter as a player, and I think he's going to be a very good player, but giving up the 2 firsts with the position that the Jags are in, I do think a lot of this had to do with, Shad Khan, the ownership, wanting kind of a face of the franchise. because Trevor Lawrence never really turned into that. And I think it's partly his personality. He's just not a guy that likes being in the limelight very much. So I do understand it from that perspective, because now I think his jersey was the number one selling jersey already
Of course.
in the NFL
Yeah.
for all the rookies that were drafted. So it works. So they've got that guy now for sure.
We talked about that, man, and I totally agree with that. I think that's something that you have to take into account. It's like, as new NFL analysts, Dakota will call ourselves, we like to just look at how are they going to fit in with the team, how are they going to help the team win. But ownership's looking at more than that, man. We saw that with the Giants documentary on Hard Knocks in the offseason when the Giants owner lost Saquon. He was like, man, I don't know if I want to let Saquon go because he's been such a pivotal part of this franchise. And when he goes to games, I'm sure he's seeing a million Saquon Barkley jerseys in the stands. Like, those things matter to owners, man. And the Jaguars especially, because the Jaguars have been kind of like I won't say like a failing franchise, but they've had hard time selling tickets at points. But a guy like Travis Hunter, man, you are not going to have trouble selling tickets with Travis Hunter, playing in that stadium now, dude. And doesn't surprise me at all. Number one jersey sales, like, those things matter to these owners. But I agree with you from a pure like team building perspective, man. We just don't love trading up for non-quarterbacks. I just don't ever love it. And honestly, we've seen trading up for quarterbacks at points recently not be that great, like with the Bryce Young trade. But listen, dude, Travis Hunter is interesting because, yes, you give up 2 first-round picks. However, you also have to look at him as 2 players. I mean, he is technically 2 players, or at least 1.5 players. So it kind of makes it more of an interesting conversation. I love bringing Travis Hunter in, like you said. The trade up was aggressive. It was very aggressive because they only traded up 3 spots. They gave up next year's first and this past draft's second round pick as well, which was a very high second round pick. So it's a very aggressive move, man. But it could be like a game-changing move for this team, though, man. It really could be, because he plays 2 of the most impactful positions outside of quarterback. And if he can play both, like at some extent, obviously he's not going to do both full-time. Like, that's just not realistic, because even at points in college, man, we saw him get exhausted during games and not be able to finish out games because he was playing both sides. But if he can be a full-time receiver with Brian Thomas Jr., which is so intriguing, man, that's such an intriguing receiving core, and have some packages at corner, like be like some kind, like on nickel packages on third downs, bring him in at cornerback, dude. He could end up being worth the capital that they gave up if he can do that.
Yeah, and you nailed that there, because at the end of the day, he is essentially 2 players. At the very least, depth at 2 positions. He will be on the depth chart at 2 positions, which is absolutely unique to today, not just the NFL, but football. It's why he just won the Heisman, was what he was able to do at both of those positions. But yeah, pairing him with Brian Thomas Jr. is kind of disgusting, to be honest, because they're
disgusting.
And going into year 5 of Trevor Lawrence now, it did seem like a move where they just wanted the guy because he is a high character guy. Like, I've never seen people say anything negative about Travis Hunter, and like watching him in his press conference, the introductory one, like the dude's happy to be there. He loves it. Like, and it's gonna be hard not to root for him in the NFL. But Trevor Lawrence going into year 5 has not really broken out like the generational hype that he got. But now you pair Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas Jr. There's really no excuses there. So want to see what they do there offensively with him, and then how they utilize him on defense will be really interesting. And kind of having like the Travis Hunter watch on, where you're watching the Jags on defense, you're like, is he out there? When are they using him, and how will be interesting. And then back to your point, on the ownership side, it is something we kind of touched on this with the quarterback stuff a little bit, but like the things that get overlooked a lot when talking about team building and everything, people just want it to be this basic thing of like what helps you win, but there is so much more to it. It's a business at the end of the day, especially for these owners, and they have to sell tickets. They have to sell merchandise. They have to do those things. And as an expansion team, they've not really had, like, Maurice Jones-Drew is probably the closest they've come to having like a big face of the NFL-ish type guy, comparatively to like the Texans, right? Who were an expansion team, but they've had Andre Johnson and J.J. Watt, future Hall of Fame guys. They've not really had that. They had the Mark Brunell and Jimmy Smith days, but they haven't had it for a while, at least since then. So I think it makes sense to get a guy like that in the building that you want to be in your locker room. And you're going to see, to your point with the Saquon thing, you're going to see half the stadium wearing Travis Hunter jerseys for their first home game.
There's no doubt about it, man. It's gonna be fascinating to watch. It's one of the funnest storylines in the NFL in this upcoming season. To be honest with you, even though it is division rivals, if you will, for us since we're fans of other teams in the division, but it's gonna be fun to watch, dude. And kind of to your T-Law point, because that's a big part of this, man. Because T-Law has shown flashes in the NFL. He's shown flashes of greatness. But giving this man, I mean, this has the potential to be the best wide receiver core in the NFL. I don't think that's insane to say when Brian Thomas Jr. broke out the way he did. I mean, he's arguably the best wide receiver out of last year's draft class, which was one of the most loaded wide receiver draft classes ever. I mean, it was an absolutely loaded class last year with Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and then Brian Thomas Jr. ends up being the most productive out of the four, which is very interesting. Now you throw Travis Hunter into that, dude. Like you said, man, excuses are over for T-Law. Like, that's the kind of move that the team is expecting to win right now, dude. Like with this team they built around Trevor Lawrence. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and to that point, we'll get back to the second round pick or their first third rounder, but jumping ahead a little bit to their second third rounder and their fourth rounder, continuing on that trend of putting pieces around your franchise quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Wyatt Millam, I love him. He was a guy that also at one point was getting some hype for the first, and then getting him in the third round is really good value. A guy that can play pretty much anywhere on the interior offensive line. So a guy that could come in and on an offensive line that has been a little rough at times, I think he could be competing for the starting center job sooner rather than later. And then Bashal Tutin, the kind of utility weapon from Virginia Tech, 4.32 speed, was utilized in kind of like, I think I compared him to Nyheim Hines when you and I were chatting offline, of that running back who's kind of a wide receiver. So adding another guy like that with his speed to this offense to go alongside Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter is also really interesting. So and Gladstone's first draft was very much, let's load this offense up.
Yeah, dude, this Wyatt Millen pick is very interesting, dude. I mean, he apparently didn't allow a single sack in his last 3 seasons. That's absurd. How is this guy a third round?
And he goes in the third round. Yes.
Yeah, I don't understand how this guy's a third round pick. Maybe he didn't test that well. You'd have to give me those numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But man, that seems like a guy that's definitely going to play at some point and play on this offensive line. So I absolutely love that in the third round. Insanely productive player. I mean, this is absolutely insanely productive college player. So be kind of surprised if he doesn't get a chance at some point in the NFL. And then moving to defense, dude, Jack Kaiser in the 4th round. Love that. That's a guy I like to take a lot in the mock draft sims, dude. One of the better, I wouldn't say better linebackers in this class, but one of those guys that could make an impact in the 4th round, I would say. But yeah, dude, I mean, honestly, the first few picks I absolutely love for the Jags. Listen, if the Travis Hunter thing is going to be a big that's going to be the big thing you look at in this draft and say, okay, is this a good draft class or not? Because now you don't own that next year's first round pick. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But
yeah, the defensive guys, Jack Kaiser, linebacker from Notre Dame, part of the run to the national championship game where they came up a little short. And then Caleb Ransaw, corner out of Tulane in the 3rd with their first 3rd round pick. They had back-to-back picks there. Incredibly athletic guy, but not a ton of production. So it is interesting where with Gladstone's first draft, there's been a combination of high athlete versus production. Kind of did a little bit of both. And I like that, to be honest, because that's how you can kind of maximize potentials. Ransaw ran a 4.33, one of the higher athletic corners in this entire class. Also had 16 bench reps. His size at 5'11", 197, which is kind of crazy. So he's got some strength to play a little bit of press. Just not a very productive corner. And then completely random note on him. He's Dre Kirkpatrick's cousin.
I did not know
former
that.
Alabama corner, 1st round draft pick as well. So yeah, love adding those pieces on defense. They actually doubled up at linebacker and took Jalen McLeod out of Auburn in the 6th. Safety out of Navy. I think he may be one of the only academy guys drafted in the 6th round. And then wrap things up with Jonah Meinheim, the center out of USC, which is another guy I feel like at one point, kind of one of those guys like a year or two ago, you probably expected to go a little bit higher. And then LaQuint Allen adding another running back at the back end of the 7th there. A little bit different skill set than Tootin. A little bit more of he's 6'2", 204, a little bit of a bigger dude compared to Tootin's, athleticism.
Yeah, man. Deep class for them. A lot of interesting prospects. Like you said, I like the mix between high upside athleticism and dudes who are productive. Definitely going to be interesting to see how Wyatt Millum pans out, and kind of looking at that as my favorite pick now, seeing how productive he was in college. But yeah, again, dude, this draft is going to come down to that Travis Hunter pick, man, because it's not just about the pick at number 2, it's also what you gave up in the future. Because if they end up having another bad season, Dakota, and that pick ends up being a top 10 pick, not going to look great, man. It's not going to look great. Even if Travis Hunter works out, man, it's just, this is going to be rough giving up to like a number 5th overall pick this year and a top 10 pick next year, even if Travis Hunter is good. So
yeah, that is what it will come down to. What's really interesting is they have 11 picks next year right now. Without their first, they have 3 3rd-round picks, which is pretty interesting. So they've still loaded up. So they'll have 4 picks most likely in the top 100. But those 3 thirds also give you the ability, if you wanted to try to trade up next year, to do it. But yeah, you're right. The what happens with Travis Hunter will be the storyline because of the capital given up for him. To be honest, I think it kind of wraps up his story perfectly, that the guy we talk about as 2 players was worth essentially 2 first-round picks to the team that drafted him. That's a pretty cool way to wrap up his college career and send him to the NFL. So I like that. So with that in mind, actually, I think they may have had, they had some interesting UDFAs. Yeah, they had Seth Hennigan, quarterback out of Memphis, who was starting to get a good amount of hype. Kind of surprised. Another one of those surprised he went undrafted. Interesting guy to add to the QB room as a potential kind of long-term-ish backup to Trevor Lawrence, who's had many injury things here or there. And then Jaquindon Jackson, Arkansas's running back as well, so a couple decent ones. And then we have to shout out, former Vol, but Danico Slaughter, who honestly played pretty well at Arkansas too. He's kind of pivotal in the reason we lost to them in this past season. So
yeah, they brought in a ton of UDFAs, man, which is always interesting when a team does that. Brought in quite a few receivers too. They brought in like 5 receivers, so get some receiver competition in there. So yeah, I like the UDFA class they brought in.
And Jabbar, I didn't even notice this, Jabbar Muhammad, corner out of Oregon, who was another one of those guys that, like, at different points in times had been hyped up to a certain level. So they got a lot of really interesting guys in their locker room from this class. So with that in mind, what is your favorite pick for the Jags?
I'm going to go Wyatt Millum, man. Looking at that dude's production, I think he could end up being a starting guard or center or whatever in the NFL in the next level. So I like that pick a lot in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think looking at their depth chart makes me think he could start at center this year. Like, he could genuinely win that job in the offseason. Really I'm going to go independent from the trade. I'm going to say if the trade had happened and it was out of my control, I'm just going to go Travis Hunter.
Got to.
I just getting the face of your franchise like that, and a high character guy, good for kids to look up to come to the Jags games, wear his jersey, and to pair him alongside Brian Thomas Jr. is probably one of the coolest scenarios that could have happened with Trevor Lawrence, who's still, the stats on him are ridiculous, that he's still like younger than most of the quarterbacks getting drafted right now. He's still really young. He's only like 25 or something. So getting him another weapon, love that. So perfect. All right. What does the consensus grade say about the Jags?
Top 10 draft coming in at number 10. I like it, man. I think some of these people probably downgraded them for the trade up for Travis Hunter as well, but that just kind of speaks to how well they did in this draft. Just some of the interesting higher upside guys they brought in, and the franchise changing player that Travis Hunter has the potential of being. So love it.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. That is the Jags 2025 class. So now we are on to the Houston Texans. So they made a splash in the inverse of what happened, where the Giants moved up with them into the back into the first round. So loved that move for them in trading back to pick up more capital. And with their first pick, which was pick 34 in the second round, so they moved back from 25 to 34, they take Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State.
Loved the pick, man. Absolutely loved this pick. In our last mock, our only mock on the channel, Dakota, it was like what we would do as GMs. I drafted Jaden Higgins in the first round because I think Jaden Higgins has the potential of becoming an X wide receiver. He's one of the few guys in this class I felt like had that potential. It's also very interesting because they already have that skill set. Nico Collins has kind of taken over that role for the Texans, but I love when teams don't draft for need. You could argue they didn't need this kind of skill set in the receiving core, but they just want good players. And taking Jaden Higgins with their first pick after, to your point, trading down, picking up 2 extra third-round picks to trade down with the Giants. Loved it, dude. I loved the process all the way through with this first pick.
Yeah, I do too. We were both big on Higgins. Loved him. Kind of wish the Titans had taken him, to be honest with you. I was hoping he was going to be there. And actually, funnily enough, the Raiders and Titans were right behind them here, and both of them traded back. And those were two teams that took receivers later on. So it is interesting to wonder, did they trade back because Higgins got taken right before them? And then they, in the third, pair him with his teammate, Jalen Noel, who has a bit of a different skill set. Higgins is 6'4", over 200 pounds. Noel is, the slightly smaller guy at 5'10", 194, incredible athlete. And honestly, Jaden is also a really good athlete. He's one of those athlete and production guys. So love the fact that they took both Iowa State receivers who have very different skill sets. After Stephon leaves, the Stephon experiment went okay because he got hurt. And then with Tank Dell, unfortunately, who's looked good for the value they got him at, unfortunately, has just had some really unfortunate injuries. So they did need wide receiver depth, and they double up with the Iowa State guys.
They did, man. I absolutely love that as well. Doubling up with the Iowa State guys. They also brought in Christian Kirk, but listen, Christian Kirk, I think he's on a 1-year deal. That's not the future. I could definitely see Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel coming in and playing on this offense, dude. You get those two guys out there with Nico Collins. All of a sudden, that's looking like a terrifying wide receiving core. And like you said, Tank Dell has been an extremely useful player. He's just been hurt all the time, and you can't rely on him to be healthy because he's had so many injuries at this point. And yeah, man, I think they got a first round talent in Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel. I don't think he's a first round talent, but where they got him, I absolutely loved it, man. So great first, or I love pairing those two guys together at the next level.
Yeah, and in the middle of those two picks, everybody was projecting them to take a tackle at 25. A lot of Josh Simmons mocks there. But they end up trading up, I think, at this point. So when they had traded back, they did trade back up in the second to get Ariante Ursary, tackle out of Minnesota, another one of those guys that at some point was kind of mocked late first in the second. So they still managed to walk away with a tackle that could compete to fill, really athletic guy, that could compete to fill in the void left with, the trade of Laremy Tunsil.
I like this pick a lot, dude. I thought Ursary was probably the best tackle available at the time. This is a guy that wouldn't have surprised me if the tackle run started a little bit earlier in the mid-20s in the first round. If Ursary was drafted to like a team like the Chiefs in the first round, that really wouldn't have shocked me at all. So getting him in this mid-second round, I loved it. Yeah, they had to trade up for him, but this is a team that was working the board all draft, man. Like you said, they were trading up and down all draft long, which I like, man. They're coming up to get their guys. I don't typically love trading up for guys, as we've talked about, but in this instance, I think this was a pretty big need for the Texans, man. I mean, you just trade away Laremy Tunsil. You need a left tackle of the future, or even moving over to right tackle is a possibility as well. So love that second round pick. I think he is going to be their future at tackle at some point.
Yeah, they did sign Cam Robinson to fill the void for left right now, but they have Blake Fisher, who they drafted last year at right tackle. So you're feeling a little in the current situation without Laremy Tunsil. So he could 100% compete for one of those jobs pretty much immediately. And you nailed it too. They probably one of the most active teams. Caserio was on the phone basically the whole draft. Like if you look at what picks they started with, they only made like genuinely 2 of those picks. Like they were moving up and down constantly, which I love that because you're playing the board and you walk away with a good draft because of it. Um, so continuing down in the third, they had 4 picks in the top 100 because of those trades. They get Jalen Smith, corner out of corner out of
USC.
USC. A little bit more productive than athlete. 5'10", 187. They pick him up there in the third, and then also get Woody Marks. So they go double up again on teams and take the running back out of USC at pick 116 in the 4th round.
They were extremely aggressive in getting Woody Marks. They really wanted him. I can't remember exactly what they gave up for that pick, but if I remember correctly, they gave up quite a bit. So they clearly have a plan for him. Like when a team is extremely aggressive for a player in the middle rounds, I always kind of assume, okay, this is a guy that they expect to come in and make an impact pretty early on. And they do. I mean, they do need. I mean, he's right now listed as their backup running back to Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon is starting to get up there in age. So I could definitely see him making an impact this year and possibly even be in the running back of the future for the Texans.
Yeah, I love that pick. I forgot he was at Mississippi State, which I think I watched him live actually before he transferred this past season when we watched Mississippi State in Knoxville. And he had his best season this past year. So you always love to see the production kind of hitting at peak. But another one of those guys who's in college for a while too. So there's always the questions around, why are you peaking 5 years into your college career type thing? But only had 1 fumble in his career too, which is for, Joe Mixon's not necessarily known for not doing that. So I think he has the opportunity to get some playing time immediately. And Jalen Smith could come in and play in the slot pretty soon for them as well in that secondary alongside Derek Stingley Jr. So love that. And then they take Jalen Reed, safety out of Penn State, in the 6th round. Guy who's pretty athletic, 4.49 for a safety, which is pretty solid. And then they took one of the more interesting picks. Our bias aside, but quarterback Graham Mertz out of Florida in the 6th round. And it's just interesting looking at guys that went undrafted and like guys like Quinn Ewers who went after him. It's just interesting that Graham Mertz was the guy they wanted to take a shot on to be their potential backup.
I was a little bit surprised by that. Graham Mertz also had some injury issues all throughout college.
True.
So again, I'm never going to fault a team for taking a quarterback in the 6th round. I think it's a good process move. Just a little surprised it was Graham Mertz considering the other quarterbacks on the board, or even some of the quarterbacks that went undrafted, to be completely honest with you. But again, it's a 6th round pick, dude. You don't expect this guy to ever play. But it's just taking a shot on the most important position in the 6th round, see if a guy can develop and, add something as far as depth.
Yeah, the injury part is interesting because like DJ Lagway's breakout this past season was because Graham Mertz got hurt and he came in and people were like, the offense is better now. But it is interesting. I mean, to your point, you always take the shots on the QBs in the later rounds. So they have a guy that can sit behind CJ Stroud and, potentially be a developmental guy to be a backup. So, and then in the 7th, they take Conte Hamilton, D-line out of Rutgers. Wasn't overly productive in college, but, a solid option. He has a decent, had a couple games where he was a little dominant. So you're just going to try to get that out of him consistently. And then Luke Lakey, the tight end out of Iowa. You always feel good taking tight ends out of Iowa.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. More athletic guy, wasn't really productive there. So we'll see what he can develop into, but depth pieces there in the 7th round.
Yeah, just more depth pieces. Drafting in volume, which I like to see. Yep. And again, it speaks to kind of their strategy throughout this draft, just moving around, picking up more picks, which I loved. But overall with this class, man, I think they got some really impactful players on offense, man. And it's interesting because if you look at CJ Stroud's rookie year, people are coming out and saying, okay, this is one of the elite rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. We feel really good about how they're going to look in year 2. And he took a big step back. And so they're looking at that and saying, okay, Stroud took a step back. We're going to make some changes. We fire the OC, and then we go into the draft, and we're going to load up on offensive talent. We're going to get him 2 more receiving weapons. We're going to get a tackle in there. We also trade away his franchise left tackle, but that's
Yeah.
fine. We're going to try to replace him in the second round, which doesn't always work. But you also got some decent draft capital out of the Laramie Tunsil trade, which is a part of it. But I like the strategy, man. They realize that like we're not where we need to be from a roster standpoint, and so we need to continue to build around Stroud. And Stroud, listen, Stroud is still really good. I'm not saying
Yeah.
Stroud isn't really good, but I think it's pretty clear after year 2 that you can't definitively say he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. You just cannot do that after year 2. So it makes total sense trying to load him up with weapons and try to help that offense get back to where it was in 2023.
Yeah, completely agree. Adding those pieces to help him out after trading one away. But yeah, sign a few guys in the offseason, draft a tackle, get a couple receivers in there. Need to help out your young franchise quarterback. They weren't very active in UDFAs. They only signed like 6 guys. And then going into next season, because the trade you mentioned, and with the Laramie stuff, they currently are slated to have 2 second-round picks next year. So that feels good for them as well. All right. With that in mind, what was your favorite pick for the Texans?
Man, I could really
guy,
go
right?
any of the first 3, but I got to go Jaden Higgins, man, at 34. I thought Jaden Higgins could have been a first-round talent in a receiver class that just wasn't very strong at the top. It was not a very strong receiving class. There wasn't a ton of guys. There are probably 3 guys in this class, dude, that had true X potential at the next level, and I think Jaden Higgins is one of those guys. So getting that in the second round is fantastic, in my opinion.
I'm going to go with his teammate. I'm going to say I love the process of doubling up, realizing you need to add more weapons to the offense. And I love Jalen Noel as a different skill set with his speed and his athleticism and his strength. So I love adding him alongside Higgins and getting those 2 guys in your locker room who I'm sure that played a part in this as well. As when you're going through these interviews with them, you like both those guys. Now you let them be teammates still, playing with CJ Stroud. So love that. All right. What did the consensus grading say about the Texans draft?
Right in front of the Colts at number 21 overall. Felt like this is a draft that probably could have been ranked higher on this list. Like if I ranked teams,
Yeah.
I probably would have ranked the Texans a little bit higher. But, we probably said this 1,000 times by now. But it's just a lot of good draft classes. Like, so when you're ranked at 21, you might be the bottom half or bottom half of the league, but it's still a great class in my opinion. I mean, they got better. So
Yeah, I wonder
like it.
on the same note where people, valuing the trades, I wonder if there was some people out there who give a negative grade for not picking in the first round because they traded down. Personally love them trading down and picking up those extra picks. But I wonder if that may have played a role for some people. But yeah, I think it does come back again to this year and how well teams drafted, because I am a little surprised to see it that low. I feel like it is one of the better drafts this year. So
It's also notable that, and we talked about this before we got on air, but Thor on here, I don't know who this guy is, but he graded a D+, which was by far their lowest grade. So that's definitely bringing it down. If you take his grade out of it,
true.
this might actually shoot up quite a bit. So
Yeah, that guy is the most sporadic grading by far of anybody. Just handing out D's and F's left and right. So
I didn't love the D+ for the Texans. They definitely did better than a D+.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, that is the Texans 2025 class, which brings us up to the last one with my team.
Your Tennessee Titans.
The Tennessee Titans, and they do what was expected of them. I think everything was smoke the entire offseason leading up to leading up to the draft. I think it was all just smoke about phones open or we don't know what we're going to do type thing, because the Giants apparently were willing to give up multiple picks to move up 2 spots. They didn't do it. So Cam Ward was the pick all along.
And it was the right pick, man. They did the right thing. This was the only quarterback in this draft class that has a true, honest chance at becoming an elite player at the next level and getting in that top 8 tier of QBs that you need to win championships. I mean, look at the AFC, man. It's just loaded with phenomenal quarterback play. So you have to take a swing on a guy like Cam Ward, who has insane traits, an absurd arm, insane athleticism. Who, yeah, he can be inconsistent with turnovers and whatnot, but he has that ceiling that you need to potentially become a contender in the AFC.
Yeah, he is in his nature like Levis-esque just from a turnover worthy play rate, but not from a brutal, game altering perspective. He also
The
has
memes, the meme
exactly.
plays.
His memes are actually him making ridiculous plays, where he's making crazy throws on the run to his left. And of everything about him, he does have, like we talked about a lot with the other quarterbacks. He does have elite traits. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can run. He's got the athleticism, but unlike a lot of quarterbacks lately, and unlike Levis, when he scrambles, he is keeping his eyes downfield. Like
Yep.
running is the last thing he wants to do. He wants to throw. He is a quarterback, and he wants to get the ball out. And pairing that with the athleticism that he has, it makes him where he can evade in the pocket, but it can lead him into trouble sometimes. Where, in the Cal game with Noel Williams, when he rolls to his right, tries to throw back across his body and ends up throwing a pick six. But the key off of that, I would say, the opposite of Levis, is he forgets. That game they got
True.
down early. He threw that pick six and then led them into comeback to win the game. So he's easy at being able to have a short-term memory, like people say with quarterbacks, to be able to forget those bad plays, get back out there, and then just be the quarterback that you are. So a bit different than Levis in that instance.
That's just one of the many intangibles of Cam Ward I love, man. He's an amazing kid with an awesome story, great leadership skills. Like, this whole offseason at like Shadur and Cam Ward were working out together, and you can just see the difference, man. You can see the difference of what Cam Ward's focused on and what Shadur was focused on. He's also, it's notable that he is literally the only quarterback in this class with elite traits, man. I mean, that's a notable part of this. So the Titans got really lucky in a sense that they were the team that was able to pick at number 1 overall, because this felt like a 1 QB class. And this is a team that's been looking for a franchise quarterback, man, for a very long time. And so, no matter what, this class is going to hinge on Cam Ward and his development. It always does when you draft a quarterback in the first round. But, again, man, love the intangibles, love the traits. Yes, he's can be inconsistent from a turnover-worthy play rate and whatnot. Not the cleanest prospect in the world, but it's interesting, dude, because a lot of people are comparing him to those 2024 quarterbacks in that loaded draft class, and a lot of people are ranking him 4th in that class, which sounds like an insult, but that class was absurd. I mean, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then Cam Ward. That says a lot because that class was extremely deep. So I think Cam Ward has a potential to give the Titans what they've been looking for, really, since Steve McNair, man. Let's be honest, since Steve McNair, the last true franchise quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. So
had a lot of jerseys over the years, from Locker to Mariota to Mettenberger. Got to have them all. Yeah, I think the story, and that is one of the coolest parts of this too. And again, we don't want to continually talk about Shador, but he was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, goes to Incarnate Word, plays so well that he transfers to the Power 5 level at Washington State, balls out there, and then goes to Miami and has them as a playoff contender down to the wire. And then being the number 1 overall pick is such a cool story. And to your point, there's clips where him and Shador are working out, and he's just like, I play football. He just kept saying that as the answer to stuff. And I love already too all the Twitch stuff that he did, where people were asking him to rank his top players at positions, and he just kept throwing out Titans players. Like, it's obvious the dude loves football, and he's excited to be the guy for the Titans, and I think he's going to fit into the locker room well. And I'm excited to see what happens where Brian Callahan has his guy. Like he was handed Levis and had to deal with that, but now Borgonzi and Callahan both have the guy they want. So, and it is interesting because you you are at the mercy of the quarterback position, and where he would have gone is interesting. And I think I would agree that he probably would have came in fourth. The people who are saying that he'd be like seventh or something are ridiculous to me. I think personally he would have been ahead of Penix, Bo Nix, and McCarthy.
I agree, and those are great quarterback prospects.
They are, exactly, and I think Caleb and Jaden were clear 1 and 2 for last year, but I think there would have also been some argument for people to argue with him and Drake, just from a pure upside perspective in terms of the cannon and the athleticism that he has. But it would have been fascinating to see. But he is the number 1 pick in this class, and to your point, the only guy really deserving of it. So we'll see if he can become the franchise guy. He will be wearing number 1. Warren Moon handed that over, which I don't know how I feel about that. That's a lot of pressure to add to your story, but he'll be wearing number 1 for the Titans. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That might have to be an off-season topic. Players asking for retired players' numbers and whatnot. But going back to the intangibles and the stuff that happened on Twitch, him just building his teammates up, which honestly I get. Like, people found it funny. I found it funny. But I honestly felt like the man was being genuine. He wanted to build his guys up before he was even drafted in that building, which is phenomenal, man. I talk about all the time how the quarterback position is treated differently than every other position. You have to act different. You have to just be a different kind of leader than other players are on the team, no matter what, because that position is just a different position, man. It's a different animal. And Cam Ward clearly understands that. He clearly understands that, which is important. That's an extremely important intangible to have, man. Also, I laughed earlier because you brought up Callahan inheriting Will Levis. He clearly wasn't very happy about that from the jump, so I'm sure he's very happy to finally get his guy in there. And it's intriguing, man. It's going to be extremely intriguing, and they've already started to build up the offense around him as well in the offseason, building up that offensive line. The offensive line has gradually gotten better over the last few years. And, they could still use more receiver depth as well, but I think they also attacked that a little bit in the draft, as we'll get into.
Yeah, we'll see what works out, but it is exciting as a Titans fan to have, a guy like Cam Ward being the face of the franchise now. So we'll see what happens there. They then go back-to-back defensive players, and I love the 3rd-round pick, but Oluwafemi Oladejo, the edge rusher out of UCLA, very raw from an edge perspective, but played inside linebacker and then bumped out for just like 7 games this past season, but played really well and is an incredible run defender from his time as a linebacker. And then Kevin Winston Jr. in the 3rd round, guy who would have probably been a fringe 1st rounder if it weren't for the injury that took him out this past season. But he's one of those guys where you go turn on their 2023 tape and he looks elite.
Yes, he does look absolutely elite, man. Also, nice pronunciation on the 2nd-round pick. Couldn't have got that myself, so I'm glad Dakota went for it. Developmental edge in the 2nd round makes total sense. Like you said, good run defender. But Kevin Winston in the 3rd round, absolutely loved. Another guy that the Colts could have had, by the way, with their Justin Wally pick, which I would have liked a lot better. Apparently, this guy is like an absolute elite tackler. Like I've heard, like has like basically never missed a tackle in his college career, which is just absurd. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but this is a guy that can play. And when you get 3rd rounders that I feel like can make an immediate impact on the team, I love that, man. Getting that in the 3rd round, which is never a guarantee. 3rd rounders are never guaranteed to come in and start. And he might not be listed as a starter right now, but I think he will make an impact his rookie year. So.
Absolutely. And it is unfortunate because he didn't get the test either because of the injury. So you don't really have the true measures. And that's part of, we kind of saw that happen with Will Johnson and obviously the knee thing. But it does seem like if you can't test some of these guys who are, you're wanting to see what the athleticism looks like, it does hurt their stock a bit. But works out where, pick him up in the 3rd. Definitely think he's going to have an opportunity to compete for some reps at safety alongside Amani Hooker. And yeah, edge was an obvious pick. Everybody wanted to go receiver earlier, but edge was a massive need for this team. Even independent of Harold Landry leaving in free agency, he was always a cleanup guy, kind of benefiting from what Jeffrey Simmons and Tierra Tart and Danico Autry, these guys had done over the past few years, and Devondre Sweat this past season, of just getting sacks from not really being that good at generating pressure. So edge was a need, grabbing him in the second, see if he can kind of develop. But at the very least, you got a good run defender. So I love that. But yeah, excited to have Kevin Winston and put him back there. And then attacking the offense, trying to put pieces
Yep.
around your new young quarterback. They go Chimray DK, wide receiver out of Florida, which was a little bit of a reach compared to the consensus here. A lot of people had him more of like a 6th round guy. But high athlete, dude, that 4.34 speed, super fast, super quick. So I think that was kind of the reasoning behind that, was getting a guy that the Titans don't really have that, and they haven't for a minute, to be honest, having a guy who just can stretch the field and is a speedster like that. And then pairing him with, you can call him the Travis Hunter killer.
Yep.
Alec Ayomanor, wide receiver out of Stanford, in the 4th round. So they double up with receivers in the 4th. And in the middle of that, also take Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas.
Love the A.O. Manor pick, man. Absolutely love that pick in the 5th round, or the 5th round, or no, 4th round, into the 4th round. Yeah, dude, like you said, the Travis Hunter killer, dude. He absolutely wrecked Travis Hunter in that game. That Colorado blew like a 28-point lead or something like that. Listen, that's an interesting storyline, man, because Travis Hunter's in the division. They'll be playing the Jags twice a year. So who knows like if that was their plan with him. But he was also just a great consensus pick. I mean, he was like 76th on the consensus board. I mean, PFF had him ranked as a 2nd round player, which is basically just Trevor Sikkema, but still 2nd round player. And yeah, he's a really solid player. And could make an impact on this offense that's lacking receiver help. And then also really liked the Gunnar Helm pick. I thought Gunnar Helm has some upside as a tight end, a huge shot. I mean, the dude is massive. So really liked how they attacked the offensive weapons in these middle rounds.
And they did it in kind of different ways where, DK's more of the athleticism dude, taking a guy you're banking on putting it together. Gunnar Helm is almost entirely based on production. He's not that good of an athlete at tight end, but the guy was just productive as hell at Texas. So you love that. And then also just having the 2 different body types and skill sets from your receiver. The guy that's a little bit faster, but then Ayomanor, who's can kind of be a contested catch guy. And honestly, doesn't have a ton of wear on the tires yet either, because he was redshirted in 2022. He's really only played for 2 seasons. So he's still pretty young. Opportunity to, him develop and really grow into things. So love that pick there as well. And then taking a few developmental guys, Jackson Slater, guard out of Sacramento State. Just a good depth piece for an offensive line that has needed help for a few years now. Another high athlete guy that can go in there and kind of compete, but at the least be a developmental backup for a bit. Marcus Harris, a little bit of a stretch pick at the time, but you'd need some secondary help. And then an interesting one in Khalil Mullings, running back out of Michigan, who going into the season when Donovan Edwards was supposed to kind of be the guy, cover athlete dude alongside Travis Hunter, and did not really put it together this season. Khalil kind of took over and led the team in rushing and had like 5.1 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns. Decent athlete as well. So adding a little bit more depth to that running back room alongside Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears.
Yeah, I like some of these late round picks. Just like you said, just adding depth and whatnot. It's interesting for people that don't know Dakota outside the podcast. He's not the biggest fan of Donovan Edwards, so any chance he gets, he's gonna take a shot at him. But yeah, I actually did really like that 6th round pick for them as well, adding depth to that running back room, because he really did. I mean, he kind of took over that job when he wasn't expected to, which is, I think, says a lot about the guy. In a year where Michigan's offense was struggling. So yeah, I like those late round picks for them.
Yep, adding those pieces and then continuing to add those pieces through the UDFAs, where they take a guy who I think a lot were surprised didn't get drafted in Xavier Restrepo, Cam Ward's teammate at Miami, who did not test well athleticism-wise, but was productive and just, kind of a unique piece in the slot. Almost Hunter Renfrow-esque, where it's like the guy almost lacks athleticism entirely, but he just gets open from the slot. So could be another really interesting piece to this Titans offense that needs receiver help.
It's wild. It's wild, dude. I mean, this is one of the best UDFA pickups in the entire UDFA class, in my opinion. Just makes so much sense. I mean, Xavier Restrepo is a really talented player, extremely productive. Like you said, he just doesn't have NFL athleticism or size. but he played with Cam Ward in college, which is such an X factor, man. We've seen that work out in times and not work out in others. But with UDFA, it's like there's absolutely zero risk in this whatsoever. This is a guy that the Titans could have drafted in the 5th round. I would be like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, pairing him with his teammate in Cam Ward, so getting him for basically nothing, no draft capital used on him whatsoever, is just fantastic. I think this is arguably maybe the best UDFA pickup in the entire NFL.
Yep, and you pair him with DK and A. Manor to now come into a wide receiver room that has Calvin Ridley, and that is pretty much it. And he's really a wide receiver too. You kind of need guys to take over. Traylon is, or he's a priority on IR, so you need guys out there that can at least get on the field. So love that too, and pairing him with him. And I saw the clip where Cam Ward called him, and actually the Bergonzi and the Titans front office, when they called Restrepo to kind of get the deal done, they were talking about how Cam had been like calling them since like the 4th or 5th round, with being like, basically saying, you got to get him. You got to get him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so they told him that,
fascinating.
So then they went and got him for him. So love that. Wow. All right. With that in mind, Austin, what was your favorite pick for the Titans?
I'm going chalk, man. Cam Ward. This could completely change the Tennessee Titans franchise. It's going to be fascinating, man, to see how it plays out. A lot of these young rookie quarterbacks have come in of recently and literally changed franchises for the better. I mean, you see what just Jaden Daniels did for the Commanders. You see what Drake May potentially is going to do for the Patriots. Like, a lot of these young quarterbacks are just completely changing the franchise's future, and that's exactly what Cam Ward could do for the Titans, dude. Completely change this team's outlook, who's needed a franchise guy for years now, who has swung and missed at quarterback time and time again, and this could finally be the guy that changes that.
I hope you're right, man. I already have my jersey on the way, pre-ordered it, so I'll have my Cam Ward jersey to add to the collection. I'm torn. I'm going to shout out Kevin Winston Jr. because I love that pick. I think the value is one of the best in the draft, but specifically within our class. But I'm going to go Alec Manor. I think the value of him in the 4th round, how young he is, how much he could continue to grow, and with the Travis Hunter stuff in the division, just makes it a cool story. But has the potential to develop into a true wide receiver 1 or 2, which this team desperately needs. So I love the value of him in the 4th round and the skill set that he brings to the offense to go alongside the new quarterback, Cam Ward. Love it, man. All right. What does the consensus say about the Titans draft?
15th overall, right around the middle, of the league. I think part of that is due to just the fact that people won't give them credit for the Cam Ward pick,
right?
Which I get, because it was the obvious thing to do. It's kind of like the Giants and Abdul Carter. It's like, well, this is the obvious thing to do. You don't really get credit on top of doing the obvious thing. So, but I mean, outside of the Cam Ward pick, even doing the obvious thing, I thought they just had a really good draft. Like you said, you just mentioned 2 of the best value picks in the draft, in my opinion. And you also have to throw Xavier Restrepo in that X factor is a UDFA. So I agree with this, man. I think the Titans had one of the better drafts in the league.
Yeah, I do think it is interesting because I don't even know if I could answer it myself on how I would grade, because it seems unfair to just exclude the person they took with the number 1 pick like it's chalk, but it's how much you do weigh that. Apparently Thor did not care because he had a horrible grade for the Titans.
Guy gives horrible grades for everybody, apparently.
And maybe he also hated Cam Ward too. I don't know, but the guy he did not like it. So, but I think that's probably about right. I would have liked to. We had different opportunities. The guys like Ezraku and stuff. We didn't trade back, but all in all, it'll all, to your point earlier, it's all going to ride on Cam Ward. First number 1 overall pick for the first time in a long time for the franchise. Had it 2016, but traded back. Became Jared Goff. But we'll see. It all comes down to Cam Ward. So that is the Titans 2025 class, and that wraps up the AFC South. So we'll be doing the NFC South next. Check out all the others that have come out. We'll continue to start releasing, one-off videos for some of the teams from each division. But like, subscribe, share, follow, do all those fun things. We appreciate any and all the support you guys give. And until next time.
Thanks for talking ball with us.